in our memory. Our children may be dismissed to Children's Church.
Good morning. Good morning. I came up here with my honey stick and my cough drop and something to share. Thank you for the opportunity to share my heart this morning with you. And Greg and I are so excited. If everything goes as it should this time next week, we will be at the beach. And we will be under one roof with 16 family members. And for a whole week, it is the week that we look forward to all year long because it is the most incredible time to be together like that. And there is a question that will be reiterated countless times while we are together as a family. And it is simply this. Hey, remember that time? We say that over and over as we sit and we recount these wonderful, wonderful memories of a lifetime together. I mean, do you ever do that? Do you ever just remember that time and the story comes into your mind or some wonderful time that you've had with a loved one? So we will remember that time over and over and over while we're at the beach next week. And we'll remember you all too. But the ability to remember is a real gift. And if you've ever had a loved one diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's and you've watched that decline in memory, you know what a hard thing that is to see. And as I'm aging, I'm assuming that's what's going on with me, but I kind of forget things sometimes. And here a while back, I went to the mall. Did you lose your car in the parking lot? Yeah, some of you have, I know. And so, I went to always go through Penny's, just City Mall, went through Penny's, and when I came out, my car was not there, and I went to panic. I went up and down, and everywhere I looked, and my car was not there. So of course, I came to the conclusion someone had stolen my car, and I'm not sure why. Yeah, there's a lot of cars they should have taken. Mom wouldn't have taken them very far. But anyway, I went inside and I told the lady, I said, my car is not here, and I know I'm parked here. So she called mall security, and he comes up in his little golf cart, and he's treating me like a little old woman. And he's like, oh, come on, we'll find your car. And somebody stole my car. So we get in his little golf cart, and I tell him what it looks like, and we're driving around, and no car. Car was not there. And he said, are you sure you came through Penny's? And I said, yeah. He said, well, maybe you came through the other side. I'm like, the other side of what? He said, well, you know, there's another entrance to Penny's on the other side of the building. I was like, oh, really? But I remember that lady who I could because I just talked to her. So anyway, he takes me to the other side of the building, and you are not going to believe this. My car was there. And I thanked him, and my thought was, somebody stole my car and drove to the other side of the building. Just to mess with my mind. Who does that? Or the other thought was that they realized it wasn't taken very far and they just parked it. But sometimes we forget, you know, I don't know if some of you may remember back in the day before we could actually push our groceries out to the car and take our buggy with us, you know, we had to purchase our groceries, and then we brought them outside the store, and we pulled our car up. Does anybody remember doing that? Really? Well, I did that one time, and I got home, and there were no groceries in the trunk because they were still in the cart outside the store. So yeah, I have some memory lapses here and there, and Greg is with me on that. And we have found sometimes it can be a good thing because when we argue, we don't remember 5 minutes later and all is well. So it works sometimes, doesn't it? So remember that time? Let your mind go there and just remember that time, whatever that may be for you. And as I thought about remembering, I have sort of a vivid imagination, I guess. And I kind of went through scripture and I thought about some of these stories. And I thought about Noah. I just can picture Noah
sitting outside on a stump with his grandchildren. And they're whittling and they're carving. And I don't know if they had knives, I don't know, it's just let my mind go. And so they're whittling and carving little animals, and one of the little grandchildren says, "Oh, Papa Noah, remember that time when you and Mama was on that big boat and all those animals were with you? Tell us that story again." And Noah goes into recounting the story, and he tells them about God's protection and God's provision, God's faithfulness. See, in remembering that time, we get to project God. We get to glorify God. We get to take Him and relive a moment that encourages us in our faith and encourages others. You know, and then kind of from there, I went to Jonah. And I'm just picturing Jonah standing on the fishing bank. Yeah, I'm sure they have fishing poles, so go with me. And they're fishing, and they cast out, and all of a sudden Jonah has hooked this big fish, and he's so excited, and he's bringing that fish in, and his buddy looks at him and laughs and says, "Hey, Jonah, remember that time when the fish caught you and said, you'll catch the fish?" And so then my mind goes through the New Testament, and I'm picturing this husband and wife, and he says, "Hey, honey, remember that time at the wedding when we ran out of wine? Boy, it was a good thing Jesus was a guest at our wedding, wasn't it?" And I go through all the times in the New Testament. What about this group that's gathered together, these disciples that are remembering as they sit around the campfire, and they're like, "Hey, remember that time when we were out in the boat and all of a sudden we saw this ghost coming before us, and it wasn't a ghost at all, it was Jesus walking on the water?" And with each of these stories, each of these recountings, each of these memories, it's brought up about the wonder of God and the goodness of God and the miracles, and we're reminded and we're encouraged. So there's a reason to remember that time. We have homecoming coming up in 3 weeks. And part of the reason we have homecoming is to remember. It's to remember, was it 71 years ago, that this small group of people gathered together in a house to plant a church because they had a vision for a church in this community. And they planned together, and they prayed together, and they worked together, and that's why Glamorgan Chapel is here. And we come together at homecoming to remember all the people who have been a part of this service, who's been a part of worshiping with us, who's been a part of serving in the community. And so it's a great time of memories. And I just think that when we gather together and having their meal, somewhere along the way on homecoming day, you'll hear somebody say, "Hey, remember that time?" And they're going to recount some story of days gone by. And it kind of makes you feel more connected. A friend of mine said that remembering is kind of like a cement to the bond that you have in that relationship. And I think it's very true. So we want to remember that time. Greg, do you remember that time when you and Jeff Sounds met for a long dinner, and you all discussed the church because they were looking for a pastor? And Greg came home from that dinner, and we prayed together, and we gave it to God and said, "This is your will." Put Greg's name in his mind before them and confirm to them that he's to be the pastor. And we are now entering our 25th year of being here, which is incredible to me. And I'm so grateful for how God has filled our life and used you all as our church family and given us so many memories. Because, well, we remember a lot of times that we talk about. And there are those special times that you want to remember and share them with your children. Remember that time when you gave your life to Christ? Do you remember that time? Remember that time when you made a public profession of faith in baptism? Go back and remember these times, and recount these times, and share these times so that others can be encouraged, so others can know the wonder of God. I remember when I was having my surgery last year, and I was very anxious about this. And it was like the day before surgery, and all of a sudden I was getting all these text messages, one after another. My phone was just blowing up. And the small group here at the church was having a Bible study, and they were praying for me. And each individual person sent me a message of encouragement, reminding me that God was with me and reminded me. And some shared scripture, and I was encouraged in my faith. And I remember that time. And I'm so grateful to have those kind of memories. And I know that you all have those memories. Dig in there and find them and recount them. I challenge you today, when you go home, connect with somebody and share that memory. And if it's a phone call, if it's a text, however you want to communicate, but just say to somebody, hey, remember that time? And let it be something that is encouraging and uplifting. Now, what I wanted to do here is kind of do 3 punctuations. And so the first is that question, hey, remember that time? But the second one is a command. But just put that period in there because it's a command. Remember is a command, and it is found, I Googled this, I love Google, in the New American Standard Version of the Bible, the word remember, the command remember is found 168 times. And you know that that's about 3 or 4 times more than you find the word pray. So it must be pretty important. Why is it so important that we remember? I thought about in Joshua chapter 4 when God gave very explicit directions to Joshua about the 12 stones that were to represent the 12 tribes, and he told them where to get the stones and what to do. But the reason he told them to do it, to gather those stones of remembrance, was so that when the children ask you, what do these stones mean? God was giving them a memorial, an opportunity to share. And he's like, when they ask you what do these stones mean, tell them what God has done. Tell them about the wonders works of God. It's an opportunity to not only remember, but to share. We need those tangible memorials sometime. And when I think about, if I didn't have pictures, if I didn't have videos, I think I would forget a whole lot. And when you have those tangible things, and sometimes, like I have my quilt that my grandmother made, I'll pull that up over me, and I just remember this sweet, sweet woman that I miss so much. And I have these wonderful memories of the incredible woman that she was. And there are certain smells of food, and a sound, if anybody ever cooks with a pressure cooker, my mom used to do that. And that jiggling sound that it makes and that steaming sound that it makes, I love that. And every time I hear that sound or smell that smell of good food, I think of my mom because she was an incredible cook. And she created in her home, the kitchen table was the most important place in the home. Not only because we shared meals together there, but that's where we played games, and that's where we shared dreams. And that's where sometimes we just cried together. That's where we visited. It was like the core of our home. So just these certain smells and these certain sounds can bring back all those kind of memories. And sometimes it helps to have something tangible. That's why God wanted the stones of remembrance, because they had the visuals so that you would be reminded. When my dad passed away, we were sitting together remembering, and somebody said, hey, remember that time when we were at the beach and Dad would go walking. He loved to go walking, collecting seashells. And every time he would come back, he would have seashells. And he'd say, hey, would this make a good necklace? And he'd bring it to Rachel. Do you think you could make a necklace out of this? And when we were cleaning his bedroom, we found a bag of those seashells. And Rob took them and had a necklace made for each of us so that we would have a tangible memory. And when I have this on, I can remember and I can see my dad taking those walks. It brings me comfort. And those tangible things are so important. And then I just had a friend who gave me this morning. And it's another one of those tangible things, but it has all these little things in it that are memories that we've had, and it's so special. So those tangible things are so important. And I think about in the New Testament, do you remember another time when we were told to do something in remembrance? When Jesus spent the time of the Passover feast, and he brings the bread, and he brings the cup, and he says to do this in remembrance of me, to take of the, he said, this is my body given for you, eat in my memory. And he said, this cup is the new covenant written in my blood, poured out for you. And when we take that communion and we remember not only what he did for us, but remember that we are redeemed. I mean, those kind of memories, we need to do those things in remembrance because, I don't think I've ever taken communion that I didn't leave so filled. I think about the song, It Is Well With My Soul. That's that one time that I can just sing that song. It still doesn't sound good when I sing it, but I can just sing that song anyway because I am so filled with the remembrance of Christ and who he is and what he has done for me. So we need those tangible memories, and I think that's why that we have this command throughout Scripture to remember. It's not like, hey, if you want to remember, or hey, remember this. No, it is remember. And so to try not to forget to remember, that's kind of hard for me sometimes. And I probably remember half of what I want to say here, but the last one is the exclamation. Remember that time. We need to remember the time. What time? Revelation 1:3 says that the time is at hand. And I love how the New Message says it. It says time is just about up. And I believe that. Time is just about up. We don't act like it. We really don't act like time is just about up. And I catch myself there sometimes. I thought about when my daughter was really young, and she was forever coming to me with another person's name saying, now, did they pray that special prayer? Do you know if they prayed that special prayer? And so I would, assure her, yeah, yes, they did. And she came to me one time with someone's name, and I said, no, I don't know. And she just looked at me and she said, then why do we keep talking about nothing? There's something to talk about. And that was 20 years ago, and that keeps coming to my mind. Because I don't think sometimes that we live thinking that way, that time is just about up, and we are wasting time. We are so consumed in how busy the world gets, and we forget. A couple of weeks ago, I did a devotion with about being a light bearer in a dark world. And so on my way to work, I just prayed, today, this day where I'm at, I really want to be a light bearer for you. Would you give me the opportunities? Would you show me those times so I don't miss them? Because I think sometimes if we're not really looking, they can pass us by. And so that I went to work, and within an hour, my boss came into my office and he said, can you do me a favor? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's where our office is. There's a lot of homeless people in the area. He said, there's a man passed out on the sidewalk. And he said, I've tried to get him up, and he won't respond. And he said, I called the police, and they're going to come. He said, but if you'll go into the conference room occasionally and just look out the window, there's this big window. He said, just make sure that he's still breathing and you see movement. I said, sure. And I went into that room. It was just like a glass between the two of us. And I looked down at this man, and he didn't know what was in the world. And I looked down at his socks. I don't know why his socks stood out to me, but I looked at his socks, and they were so old and so dingy and dirty. And I just said, Lord, I can't do anything. And I thought of a prayer to be a light bearer in a dark world, and I thought, okay, how can I do that here? And I just thought of this mother who may be grieving because her son is somewhere out there and she doesn't know where he's at. So I began to pray, and I prayed for this man, and I prayed for this mother, and I prayed for all the people who loved and cared for him. And my heart just broke, and the tears just fell. And I thought, I'm at work, I don't care. And I would go back to my desk and get it together, and I would go back and check on him, and I would see a foot twitch or something, and I would just pray again. And I did this several times until the police came, and the police, once they got there, I didn't go back because I didn't want to see anything. But my heart was so heavy, and I thought, was praying enough? Is prayer enough to be a light bearer in a dark world? And I think it can be. But I called my son, and I said, hey, George, I just want you to know I love you. And he said, Mom, I love you too. And I said, no, I want you to know that I love who you are, and I love the life you live and the choices you're making, and I love who you're with. And he said, Mom, are you okay? And I said, yeah, no. And I told him about this man. And I said, I'm so glad it's not you. I said, I know that a mother's heart can be broken. And this mother's was. And do you know how many are? And my son is a deep feeler, and he's so sensitive. And he said, how old was this man? And I said, he was like 40-something. And I'm waiting for this empathy to just pour forth. And he said, you know, Mom, I'm only 30. It could be me that I'm 47. I said, all right, thank you, Andrew. And I do appreciate his sense of humor. But after I hung up, I thought, you know, God help us if we ever think we're above falling to that. And God help us if we pass up opportunities, if we don't live life as if it's urgent. Because let me tell you, it's urgent. It is urgent that we take the love of Christ out and that we live, because time is just about up. We don't have time to waste. That same day, a client came into the office, and his dad had just passed away the week before. And sometimes it's awkward, you know, you don't know whether to say anything or not to say anything, but the prayer was in my head. I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to be a lot better. And I just told him, I said, I'm really, really sorry about your dad. I know this has been a really hard time for you. He said, oh, you don't know. He said, my mom has cancer, and she doesn't have very long left. And he began to weep, and he was heartbroken. And I shared the love of God with him. And I am thankful that I'm in a workplace where I can do that. And I assured him that I would be praying for him. And there were other opportunities through the day like that. By the time I went home, I just felt like heavy in one sense emotionally, but yet I had that fulfillment that I had been a lot better. And I thought, how many days have I missed because I didn't look for the moment or look for the opportunity, and I didn't live as if this is urgent. And it is urgent. That's why there's an exclamation point. It is so urgent. See, it's easy to let the darkness come in. And right now, our world is in a place of such darkness and despair and hopelessness that if we don't go with our lightsaber and our salt shaker, we're in trouble, and the world is too. We're called to do that, to be salt and light. I thought about excuse me, sorry. When the anniversary of my dad's death was coming upon us, the first year in February 24th, I did not expect the sadness and the grief and darkness to come in on me like it was doing. And I think it kind of made me a little bit angry. And I just, I thought, you know what? I'm going to declare February 24th my dark day. I didn't even ask God. I didn't talk to him about it. I didn't know what I could say. It was going to be my dark day. And it was a day that I was going to just let the sadness consume me. And I was going to let that cloud, the dark cloud that had been hovering over me, just envelop me. And I made that decision. Well, See, there was this young boy that I had the privilege of getting to know in the school system about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And he was only 7, but he was filled with so much anger and so much sadness. And I sat with him one day, and he shared with me, with the tears flowing, about remembering the day his dad died. And as he poured this out, I cried with him. And at one point, he just stopped, and he said, "Miss Teresa, is your dad alive?" And I said, "Yeah, he is." And the wisdom of an old soul, the 7-year-old said, "Then you don't know how I feel." And he was right, I didn't. And I went home that day and I hugged my mom and I hugged my dad. And at the funeral home after my dad passed, there was this moment where that little boy's face came to me and what he had said. And I thought, oh, I know how you feel. I wish I did, but I know how you feel. And so I was preparing for my dark day. And I opened my desk drawer and I keep index cards. I write everything on index cards. And so I was just flipping through a stack of index cards. And there was an index card with his name on it. And it had his phone number and his birthday because he wanted me to remember his birthday. Well, his birthday is February 24th. And when I looked at that, I felt a little guilty that that was my dark day. And I said, I can't, it's my dark day and I can't do anything about it, and shut the door. Because I'm closing that out. Well, every time, when you know it's a day, that door had to be open so many times that there's that card looking at me every time. And I just knew that I had to make a choice, and so I just said, God, you know, you're running my dark day. And you really asked about it, I guess, so there's that. But, you know, I can't go to the school to see him. I can't, you know, I mean, for all the reasons that this didn't make sense. And then, of course, you know, there's always pickup. And I didn't know where it could apply here. But I sometimes you just have to let the Holy Spirit work in you and just follow what He says. And so I had to make a choice. Was it going to be a dark day? Or was there going to be light? And I told my dad-in-law, see, my dad loved this little guy because he, once he realized that my dad was living, he would send messages to my dad. And he would say, now you tell your dad. Now, if he wants to fix that weed eater, he needs to pull that string. And so he would give me all these instructions. And I always tell my dad, and Dad was in there, you tell him about my lawnmower, that's hard, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so it was back when my dad loved him. He never met him, but he loved him. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to reach out and remember his birthday in whatever way that I can. And I'm going to do it to honor my dad's memory. And I'm going to do it to honor God. Because I'm going to choose light over dark. And when you feel dark, that's not an easy thing to do. But when February 24th came, I went through the day and I just prayed, you know, Lord, the only thing you do is make a phone call. And I didn't even know if that's okay, but that's what I'll do. So when I knew he was home from school, I called and I talked to his guardian, and I told her, I said, this is Miss Teresa. I don't know if you remember me, but and this is as far as I got. And she just went on, oh, Miss Teresa, and it was just such nice things. And oh, how we miss you, and oh, how grateful, and it's just on. And all of a sudden, have you ever seen that light reflect? And light was just coming back and filling me up. Because that's what God does. That's what He wants to do. And when we go out, He gives it right back. And He gives it back to us in so much more. And I told her, I said, well, I know it's his birthday, and I just wanted to call and wish him happy birthday if I could. And I said, if you're not comfortable with that, that's okay. If you want to just tell him, that's fine. And she said, are you kidding me? He's jumping up and down saying, Miss Teresa, Miss Teresa. And he got on the phone and he said, Miss Teresa, it's my birthday. And I said, oh, I know, and that's why I called. I want you to know that I'm thinking about you today, and I just want to wish you a happy birthday. And I started to ask him how things were going at school, and I told him how proud I was of him, and how proud his teachers were, and what a great young man he was going to be. And by the time I hung up from that phone, it was not a dark day at all. I honored my dad's memory. I honored God, and then God honors me right back. And that's how he does it. And I realized that time is short. Time is just about up. And if we don't choose light over dark, and if we don't take that light out and deliver hope and grace and love of Christ to a world that is in despair, I think woe to us. I don't know who's worse off, if it's us or those who are in the darkness. But I know that remembering is so important, and I challenge you to go home and share with a loved one. Remember that time. Share a moment so that you can sit at that moment just a little more. And I challenge you to remember as a command. Find something tangible. You know, you who have young children, find something that's a memorial in your home that can represent the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God, and His protection and His provision, something that is a reminder that you belong to Him. And then I challenge you with an exclamation to recognize the urgency of the time and to take the light out. See, Greg has taught me that I have to have a big idea. And so the big idea is simply this: don't forget to remember. If you forget where your car is parked, it's okay. And if you forget my name, that's okay. But don't forget to remember those things that are really important. And I have to tell you, I've been in a nursing home when I've seen people with dementia and Alzheimer's that can't remember their child. And I've seen them with that hand lifted up while they sing every word to Amazing Grace and praise God. Don't forget to remember. Let it be poured deep, deep within. And hey, remember that time at Glamorgan Chapel when a very gracious church family sat and listened as their pastor's wife shared her heart? I will remember that time. Thank you.